7 Laws of Influence. According to the book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini, there are 7 laws of influence. And according to Cialdini, this is what happens when we get influenced. We walk into a situation and then something comes into our brain outside of our conscious awareness. And these things drive us to action. But then we do the thing and then we come up with an after the fact rational sounding story that describes why we did what we just did. But this is just a story so our ego can feel in charge of why we did what we just did. The story is not the real reason. The problems come when we try to use that story to persuade others. But because it's not the real reason, it doesn't work. So we believe that persuasion is some kind of mysterious art that only naturally gifted people can do. But Cialdini spent his entire career doing all kinds of experiments and meta-studies to find out what these outside of our conscious awareness things are that make us do things. And in this video, we will give you these 7 laws of influence. Number 1, authority. We will believe something without question or do something without question when it comes from a recognized authority figure. This was famously shown during the Milgram experiment. In the Milgram experiment, they had an authority figure, they had a teacher, and they had a learner. The teacher was told it was a memory test. The teacher would ask the learner a question, and if the learner got the question wrong, the teacher would give what they thought was an electric shock to the learner. The learner was in on the experiment, and the learner was pretending that the shocks were real. The real study was to see how many people in the teacher position would continue to give a shock to a learner, begging for the shocks to stop, only because the authority figure said it was okay. The result, 2/3 of people in the teacher position continued to give a shock to the learner who was begging for the shocks to stop. All because the authority figure said that it was okay. 2, social proof. We tend to do what other people do. The more we identify with those other people, the more we will mindlessly follow them. This was shown during the famous Asch conformity test. One guy was in a room all by himself, and he was shown 2 pieces of paper. One paper had 1 line, the other paper had 3 lines. He had to choose which of the 3 lines was the same length as the 1 line. Easy peasy, right? But then they put other people in the room with him. And these other people were secretly part of the study, just like the learner in the previous experiment. And their job was to choose the wrong line on purpose just to see how it would affect the original guy. And guess what? 2/3 of people chose the wrong line when other people purposely chose the wrong line. They would rather go along with the crowd than choose what they knew to be the right answer. 3, scarcity. The scarcer something is, all else equal, the more we will value it. Cialdini described a cookie test. This was set up in a public place. They'd grab random people walking by and ask them to eat a cookie and then fill out a questionnaire about the cookie's deliciousness. And the test was performed under 2 different scenarios: a full cookie jar and a nearly empty cookie jar. Even though they were the same cookie in both scenarios, the cookies from the nearly empty cookie jar were rated as being more delicious than the cookies that came from the full cookie jar. A scarcity of cookies made them taste better. 4, comparison and contrast. We value things differently based on what they are being compared against. In one study, test subjects put their hand in a bucket of water and tried to guess the temperature. When their other hand was in a bucket of warm water, they underestimated the temperature of the test bucket. When their other hand was in a bucket of cold water, they overestimated the temperature that was in the test bucket. One clever restaurateur had trouble selling a bottle of wine that was the most expensive bottle of wine on his wine list. They added another bottle of wine to the wine list that was $200 compared to the previous bottle of wine that was $50. When the $50 bottle of wine was on the wine list by itself, nobody bought it. But when they added the $200 bottle of wine, the $50 bottle of wine seemed cheaper by comparison, and it sold a lot more. 5. Commitment and consistency. We tend to do more of what we tend to do. We stick to the same brands, the same restaurants, even the same menu items on those same restaurants. The longer you do something, the harder it is to break your routine and do something different. In one study on jury trials, they looked at the jury deliberation time based on how they voted. Secret voting, where they vote guilty or not guilty on a piece of paper and then count them anonymously, or public voting, where everybody says their opinion out loud, guilty or not guilty. Unsurprisingly, the jury trials where they voted secretly were over twice as fast as the ones where everybody said their opinion out loud. Because of the law of commitment and consistency, once you state your opinion out loud, it's a lot harder to change it. 6. Reciprocity. When somebody does a favor for us, we feel unconsciously obligated to reciprocate that favor. As described in Cialdini's book, waitstaff use this law expertly. They'll give off the daily specials, but then they'll look around and say, you know what, I wouldn't get the daily special. You should get this instead. It's cheaper and it's much more delicious. Because this feels like a private favor to those particular diners, they reciprocate by giving a higher than average tip. Other expert users of the law of reciprocity are politicians. For example, FDR and Jimmy Carter had more or less the same political ideology. FDR was elected 4 terms until he died in office, while Jimmy Carter was once and done. Why? FDR had tons of favors built up in the favor bank. Jimmy Carter, on the other hand, was an outsider. I don't know you, I don't owe you. So he couldn't get anything done. 7. Liking. The more we like somebody for any reason, the more we'll believe whatever this person says. One way this plays out is with physical beauty. In one study, they took 2 groups of people, pretty people and normal people. They coached them both and then sent them on job interviews. They coached the pretty people to give dumb-sounding answers. They coached the normal people to give good answers. And guess what? The dumb-sounding pretty people got hired at a higher rate than the intelligent-sounding normal people. Another way to leverage the liking law is by mirroring and matching the person you are talking to, or paying attention to and validating their opinions. So what's the takeaway from all this? We are not Vulcans. We are not robots. We are not angels. We are emotionally driven, self-aware, talking monkey people. These laws are very, very powerful if you want to persuade people to your way of thinking. But they are also very, very dangerous if you don't understand them. And then other people can persuade you to their way of thinking. Understand these laws to protect yourself. Understand these laws so that you can persuade others. So long as you don't have any ill intentions, you can use these very effectively for money, for love, and for whatever else you want. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment. To learn more, please visit mindpersuasion.com.